When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like Skims or Allbirds, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and great marketing. But an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the business, making selling and for shoppers buying simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. It's home of Shop Pay, the #1 checkout in the world. You can use it to boost conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going through to checkout. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Allbirds uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/income, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/income to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/income.
This is The Planted Runner. I'm Coach Claire Bartholic, and welcome to the PR Training Lab. If you've never heard one of these episodes before, this is where you get to know me a little bit better, my process in creating a custom training plan for a runner just like you. And if you would like to enter to win a free training plan created live on the show, all you have to do is first write an Apple Podcast review and then go to theplantedrunner.com/PR lab. Once you sign up, you'll get a form with a list of questions that I ask every single runner. And if you'd like to follow along, the questions are in the show notes. Today, we are going to be making a training plan for Clint, and this one is a little different from what I've normally done here, and I think it's pretty common, so I wanted to talk about this today. So let's get into it. Clint is 51 years old, and he learned about the Planted Runner from the Planted Runner podcast, just like you are listening to today. I asked, what is the date of your race? And he said, no goal race. I just want to get back to consistent running after taking much of the winter off. If all goes well, I will do a full in the fall. Okay. Wow. So not running at all. And it's March and he wants to do a full marathon in the fall. I'm going to say, well, it depends on what's going on here. Maybe we want to talk about adjusting that because the fall is really only 4 months away, 5 months away. So I would actually rather him maybe do a half in the fall or maybe do a 5K in the fall. Trying to train from 0 to a full marathon in 6 months is ambitious. I'm not saying he can't do it. But let's go on a little bit more in what he's doing because we'll see. I'm not going to make any promises yet, but that's probably not something that I would recommend. How long have you been running regularly? Okay, 20 years. Well, that's great. So it really depends on how much his fitness has diminished over the winter. If he did not run at all, like nothing, no running, but no other activity at all, then yes, his aerobic fitness will have diminished. How much? Who knows? It could be 10%, it could be 20%. And it's more than just the aerobic fitness. It's also your muscles, your joints, everything that's going on with building fitness. If you take 3 months off, you are going to have lost a significant amount of fitness. Now, if you have been strength training and cross training all winter, been doing other things all winter to keep your level of fitness up, then you might not have lost much at all. You will have lost some of what I call impact resistance. So running is a high impact sport. And if you've been, let's say, cycling inside instead, your aerobic fitness could still be high. Even your muscular fitness could still be high, especially if you strength train. But your impact resistance will not quite be the same. A lot of people call it durability, your leg durability. It's the ability to keep going after all the pounding of running. So a high impact sport like running, you need to do a significant amount of it to get your body used to the sport, right? So if you're only doing 0 impact sports like like cycling, like swimming, like the elliptical, then you're not going to quite be as ready for running. But if you've got all the other pieces of the puzzle, then you're not quite as far behind as you might think you are. But if he literally has been doing nothing all winter, I would not suggest running a marathon in 6 months. I think that that's too ambitious. And actually, as I'm recording it, it's the end of March. So a fall marathon might even be 5 months away. And I would suggest modifying the goal if that's the case. All right. Do you prefer to use kilometers or miles? He's American. He would like to use miles. Do you have any current or reoccurring injuries? If so, how does this affect your running and your training? Clint says, arthritis is an issue. My knees are frequently painful or stiff. Okay, I'm not sure if I have talked much about arthritis. In fact, I don't think I have talked much about arthritis. So this is really common in just any person. It doesn't just happen to runners. Running does not cause arthritis. It happens to everybody. Well, it doesn't happen to everybody. Not everybody gets arthritis, but it can happen to anybody regardless of sport or regardless of fitness. And so I took a moment to look up how arthritis and running are related. And I found some information from the Arthritis Foundation. And they agree that running can be safe and healthy for people who suffer from arthritis. They have a couple of suggestions. They say, make sure that you are wearing cushioned shoes. So again, as the impact forces we want to lessen, we don't want to be doing barefoot running or minimalist shoe running. So get the nice, fat, squishy ones. Make sure you use good form. Form has been talked a lot about lately in social media and in running circles, that people choose the best form for themselves. So I am not a fan of changing your form too much. I think that can sometimes cause issue. But if you are in pain, then yes, try to change your form. They also recommend pool running. So aqua jogging, pool running is great because, again, no impact, but you are still doing the running motion. Softer surfaces like running on trails versus the road or running on the treadmill. And then they mention shortening your stride. So when you shorten your stride and if you keep your cadence nice and quick, you'll still go the same speed roughly, but the impact forces will lessen. So there's a few tips from the Arthritis Foundation. I'm certainly not an expert in arthritis, but I've worked with athletes who have it, and it is something that really can slow down your running. And I don't mean just speed. Sometimes it's just too painful to run. And it's not that running is causing the pain. It's not necessarily causing an injury, but the inflammation, the stiff feeling, it can be that running just doesn't make your knees feel good. So that's going to cause you to not want to run. It's going to maybe depress you if running is your thing and you can't do it without pain. So I would suggest talking to your doctor, and maybe if it really is bad, you might need to talk to a rheumatologist, and you need to see what you can do to lessen the pain. So we don't want to do something in life that purposely causes pain, right? Whether we're talking about arthritis or not. So if you can run relatively pain-free and you still want to run, I encourage you to do so, but you might need to supplement your running with another form of cross-training, but we'll get to that in just a minute. What are your recent race times and distances? And this is in the past 6 months to 12 months. So I want to know how fast he is so that I can set paces for him. And in this case, paces aren't super important. If you've taken a significant time off, your fitness is not going to be where your race distances were. So it's almost irrelevant if you haven't raced recently or if there's been something to change your fitness. But the reason I ask is to set paces. And if you haven't raced or you've never raced or you haven't raced in a long time, I want you to estimate how fast that you could run a mile, which is 1.6 kilometers, as fast as possible to set paces. But again, if we're starting from scratch or starting back from a big break, it's not going to be super accurate. But let's see what Clint says here. He says he hasn't raced in a year. He says he typically runs about a 2-hour half marathon, but I'm not there now. So 2-hour half marathon, that is 5:42 per kilometer or 9 minutes and 10 seconds per mile. So that's a very healthy half marathon time for a recreational runner, but he's not there right now. So I'm not really going to be setting paces for him. We're just going to be doing things off of effort for now. How many miles does he run per week? He says, I've been managing 2 miles every other day. Okay, that's a good start. He's not just absolutely at zero. He doesn't say how long he's been doing this, but let's assume he's been doing this for a few weeks. He also says, I used to regularly run 30 to 40 miles per week. And if you're in metric, that works out to be 48 to 64 kilometers per week. So he used to have some good mileage, and now he's 2 miles every other day. So 6 to 8 miles per week. Still struggling with a little bit of consistency. So let's keep going. What's the highest amount of weekly mileage you've ever run, and how long ago was that? He says 60 miles in marathon training a few years ago. So 60 miles is quite a lot for a recreational runner. That's 96 kilometers per week. So that's pretty healthy, but it was a few years ago. So we're not going to take that into account now. We know that this is something that he has the ability to do, or at least he did a few years ago. So he could potentially get back there at some point, assuming that he can manage the arthritis pain. Again, I am not going to tell anybody that they can't do what they want to do. If Clint wants to run a marathon this fall, more power to you. I'm not going to stop you. I, again, would suggest that you put it off a little bit longer to see if that is something your body really wants you to do, but it's certainly possible. Again, I'm not a dream killer or anything like that, but I would say realistically, I would like to see you get some more consistent running behind you before signing up for a big goal. But again, you're an adult, do what you want. And we're going to move on here. So what is the pace you would say is a very easy effort for an average run? This is a pace so slow that you could talk the entire time, almost as easily as walking. So I asked this question for a couple of reasons. The first reason is I want to know if you're truly running easy. If you say that you can run a half marathon in 9-minute miles, and then you say that your easy pace is 9-minute miles, there's something off there. You should be running much slower than half marathon pace for your easy runs. This is also an important question if you haven't raced in a while, because then we can figure out what your normal easy run pace is. And that way I can set your paces off of your easy run. It's less accurate because some people don't run easy enough. Some people are running too fast. I would say there's not a lot of people that are running too slow for their easy run. You could argue that some people do, but I would say that's rare. He says 2 miles is taking me about 22 minutes. So 11 minutes per mile, which is 650 per kilometer. Okay. So if he's been running for 20 years, so I'm going to assume that he knows what an easy pace is. I'm going to assume that that is comfortable for him. That's a lot of assumptions. You could run for 20 years and still run your easy pace too fast, in my opinion, but we're going to give Clint the benefit of the doubt and set his paces roughly off of an easy pace of 11-minute miles. But we're not going to necessarily give him much speed work for now, and I'll get to that in just a few minutes. I'll be back with more from the PR Training Lab right after this. I want to tell you about a unique opportunity for you to get stronger, faster, and stay motivated to hit your running and nutrition goals this year. And that is to join the PR team. I started it in 2022, and I have to tell you, it's even better than I imagined. Each member of the team gets a custom training plan made by me for you based on your unique fitness, goals, and lifestyle. Everything you need to achieve your running dreams is included, such as strength training, recovery, and even cross training if you want it. I include weekly mental strength training as well, and training tips and nutrition guides. But here's where it gets really cool. The group has its own page in the app where we share workouts, ask training questions, and get feedback from me and the other teammates. And each week, I create an exclusive private podcast just for the team based on the questions I get and what I see in their training each week. And what I usually end up doing is sharing behind the scenes and exclusive sneak peeks that I don't share anywhere else. So instead of joining some coaching Facebook group or sitting through another Zoom call, you get to listen to tailored advice on the run, and you don't have to do this all alone. When you're ready to take your running to the next level and join an amazing team of runners, head to theplantedrunner.com/group and join us today. It's more affordable than you think, and I can't wait to have you. This is The Planted Runner. I'm Coach Claire Bartholic, and welcome back to the PR Training Lab. What days would you like to run? Ideally, every day. But I know I'm not there yet. Realistically, 4 to 5 days. My schedule changes with work a lot, so I'll need to move things around as needed. Long run on the weekend. Okay. Now, usually at this point, I talk about whether he wants to run his speed days on Tuesdays or Thursdays and get into the logistics of the schedule with this person. But I'm going to skip that part for now because since this is a comeback to running, we're going to do things differently. We're going to plan things out differently than we would for half marathon training or 5K training or marathon training. Things can look different, and I'll explain why in just a little bit. What kinds of non-running physical activities or cross-training do you do each week, and when do you do them? He says, I'm not as consistent now as I'd like to be. I want my non-running days to be strength or easy workouts like yoga, maybe bike rides. I also walk my dogs 30 minutes every day. Okay, great. So walking, even if it's walking your dogs where you stop and sniff all the time, walking is a great cross-training activity for runners. So he could bump up his dog walks or walk the dog, drop him back off home, and then walk purposefully. And that is a great way to maintain, or even improve your aerobic fitness without the extra impact. So we might have him walk purposefully, double that if he has time to do that. That is a great way to sneak in a little bit more fitness. Now, I'm going to talk about the ordering of days here because this is going to be different than what I talk about all the time. So if you listen to the show or if you read my work, I talk about keeping the hard days hard and the easy days easy. So that means if you're doing a long run, we would want some strength training on the same day. Or if you're doing a speed day, we would want strength training the same day after the speed day, either right after or a few hours later. And the reason we want to do that is because we want to maximize recovery. So you're working hard on your speed day and then you do some lifting afterward. The next day is going to either be rest or easy running. So we really have this nice polarized training where it's really hard and you really can give your best on one day. And then you have time to recover, build back up from the damage you've done. And then by the time your next speed day comes around or your next long run comes around, you are feeling fresh and ready to go and ready to work hard again. This pattern allows you to run faster on your speed day. So you're maximizing your speed day. You're reaching your potential on your fast days. And then your easy days are slow. Maybe they're a little cranky. Maybe they're a little uncomfortable, but that's fine because you're recovering. We don't need to feel great on an easy day. We really want to feel great on a day where we're trying to perform. So that is going to be different when you are coming back to fitness, because we're not going to push you that hard in intensity. What we're looking for is consistency. So we want to build the habit of working out every day or almost every day. We want to kind of treat you like a hybrid athlete. So hybrid training is all the rage these days, with high rocks being really popular. It's where you're working on aerobic fitness and you're working on strength. And some would say you're working to be average at both instead of being really good at one. That is actually what we want, to get a good base of generalized fitness before we specialize. So you want to be relatively strong and relatively good at endurance before you move into either category. And in this case, it would be endurance. So for Clint's schedule, I am going to schedule him something every day, or at least 6 days. He can have a full rest day 1 day a week. But his non-running days are going to be exactly what he asked for, which it's going to be either some kind of yoga or mobility, or it's going to be strength training. And I'm not going to give him speed workouts just yet. We're still working on endurance and we're still working on building up the habit. I could give him some speed work right now, but I suspect he's stopping at 2 miles because 2 miles is hard for him right now. Okay. So 2 miles is probably where he wants to stop for a certain reason, whether it's because his knees are starting to hurt or whether it's because it really is a challenge for him aerobically, even at the pace that he told us was easy. Is probably intense enough for right now. So we don't need to add the extra layer of speed, the extra lever. You know, I talk about the 3 levers all the time, and those are things you want to pull one at a time. You don't want to pull all the levers at once. So it's frequency, intensity, and duration are the 3 levers of fitness. And so we don't want to pull on the intensity lever when we're working on the frequency lever. We're kind of working on the distance. We'll bump them up a little bit in distance as the weeks progress. But right now, I want Clint to feel like an athlete again. So he, you know, whether it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I'm not going to get into the days of the week specifically, but we want him to run his 2 miles on one day. Let's call it Monday. And then on Tuesday, let's get 30 minutes in the gym or at home strength training. And then Wednesday, we'll have him run a little bit again. And then maybe he'll do a little mobility right after, or maybe he'll save that for Thursday. He can do 10 minutes, 30 minutes of yoga. He can do some easy cycling, but we don't want to do impact forces every day. So that is something we want to alternate. So 1 day at least in between his running days is great. It's actually great for most runners, even if they are marathon training, but especially somebody who's getting back into it, especially somebody who has a limiting factor. In this case, it's the arthritis in the knees. We want to give yourself that break from the impact forces. So he could do cross training 1 day and then run the next day and then strength the next day. So we want to give him 3 days of strength per week on his non-running days. And we want to throw in some mobility. We want to throw in some cross training whenever he feels it appropriate. And all of this can change. This is a recipe that could have a lot of different flavors to it. Really depends on what works for you. But we want to really develop and establish the habit of consistency. So I would like Clint to block off 1 hour a day. 1 hour every single day for training. Now, it doesn't mean he's running for an hour at a time or strength training an hour at a time, but he is blocking off that time so that he can have cushions on either side of his training. So maybe he's only running 22 minutes, but he could be cooling down a little bit, but with a walk. I would add a walk to his runs. Or maybe he's taking a little bit longer to warm up. And in that warm up, he is doing some mobility. or maybe after the run, he decides to do a little longer static stretching just to kind of feel the movements. But when you give yourself a set period of time that's longer than the workout, and maybe it's for changing and showering and extra time getting ready for work or something like that. But when you say, hey, this is my protected time that I'm dedicating to my fitness every single day of the week, it gets protected. It's like a meeting in your calendar. It's something that you prioritize, just like something that you would do in any other area of your life. And I would argue it's more important, right? If we don't have health and fitness, everything else falls apart. So this is the time that we need to schedule for ourselves. And, most people do it in the morning, or a lot of people do it in the morning because the world is not asking anything of us at 5 a.m. But if that's not your situation, or if you don't operate that way, do it another time. Maybe you can do it in your lunch break, whenever it works for you. But if you can be consistent with the time that you exercise, the habit is easier. It is not impossible to be fit when you have a changing schedule. I'm just saying it's easier when you have a consistent schedule and it is part of your routine. If you don't have a consistent schedule, things move around a lot, then it's going to be slightly more difficult, but it is not impossible, and you certainly can do it. What are your biggest struggles with nutrition? And Clint says, I'm still eating like I'm marathon training when I'm not. It's too much and I've gained some weight. I know when I'm back on a healthy exercise schedule, the food part will resolve. Okay, this is really common. It is really common to get used to a certain style of eating, whether it's good, bad, or ugly. It's just a habit. You start eating a certain way and you stick to it regardless of what you're doing on the exercise side. He says that he knows that that he can get back to a good exercise routine and the food part resolves. And I do see that happening a lot. When you get healthier, when you make a commitment to yourself on the exercise side, a lot of times the temptations aren't as much because you know that you're putting in the work on one side. You know you've made a commitment and you don't want to sabotage it with bad eating habits on the other side. Of course, I want to remind everybody that you're human and you deserve to celebrate good things in your life. And we do that as humans with food. And that is okay occasionally. But if you're treating yourself every single day with something that you know is not beneficial for your lifestyle, that's not a treat. That's a habit. So treat yourself when it's a treat, of course, but look at what's becoming a habit. So I'm not going to get too much into this because he says that he knows that the food part will resolve. A lot of times when we aren't exercising, it gets us down. We get depressed, and sometimes we fill that void with food. That is very, very normal. But hopefully, once Clint starts getting into his new routine with exercise, the food part really will resolve. I'll be back with more from the PR Training Lab right after this. The Planted Runner is sponsored by Liquid IV. Did you know that I was a Class 5 whitewater rafting guide in my 20s? For 3 summers, I guided guests down some of the wildest rivers in the West while the sun beat down on us and the icy water kept us cool. Hydration at the time was a rinsed out orange juice jug roped to the raft. Thankfully, today we have superior hydration. Liquid IV delivers longer lasting hydration than water alone. And right now you can get 20% off your first order with code PLANTED at checkout. I love the mandarin orange flavor and rely on it after every workout. Just 1 stick and 16 ounces of water hydrates better than water alone. Powered by Live Hydroscience, an optimized ratio of electrolytes, essential vitamins, and clinically tested nutrients that turn ordinary water into extraordinary hydration. Soak up unforgettable moments with on-the-go hydration from Liquid IV. Tear, pour, live more. Go to liquidiv.com and get 20% off your first order with code PLANTED at checkout. That's 20% off your first order with code PLANTED at liquidiv.com. This is The Planted Runner. I'm Coach Claire Bartholic, and welcome back to the PR Training Lab. What are your biggest struggles mentally when it comes to success and performance? And Clint says, to be honest, aging is a struggle. Running used to be my thing, and because of the knee pain, I've been limited in what I can do, which means some days I don't do anything. I also compare myself to who I used to be, and it's frustrating. Oh, I think everybody can relate to this. Everybody over 40 can relate to this. Yeah, this is a new era in our lives as we get into our 40s and 50s and 60s. And every new decade, there seems to be changes in how we look and how we feel. And on the inside, we still feel like that 30-year-old person. And yet our bodies can't do what they used to be able to do. It's super common to say, I used to run this, or I used to be able to lift this. And now at age 50, whatever, I can't do that. And that's frustrating. Yes, it is frustrating. And, there are ways to get back to what you used to be before in some ways, especially if you never trained to your potential when you were younger, then you are going to have a lot more potential still as you are older. But if you really were a top level athlete in your 30s, let's be realistic. It's not going to be the same in your 50s and 60s. It's simply not. If we look at the elite athletes of the world and we can see about when certain changes happen where they're no longer absolutely world class. Now, most of us aren't trying to be world class, right? Most of us don't have a hope to be world class, but we'd still like to feel good. We'd still love those times. And at some point, if you've already reached your potential physically and you know that you have both biologically and with the best training possible, and you're getting older, we've got to be realistic that, those times are going to slow down at some point, and we've got to be okay with being in, a new era of life. You could look at it. I kind of see comparisons when it comes to beauty as well with women, but maybe with men too. So, we look in the mirror, and if you were a beautiful person, conventionally beautiful at 30 years old, and now you're 50 or 60 years old, you look in the mirror and you don't see the same face as you did, right? And so maybe you get the creams and the injections, and maybe you get the surgery, and you can do all of these things to help you retain the look that you had when you were younger. But at some point, it's not going to work, right? You could have the best plastic surgeon in the world and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you're still not going to look 25, right? And I think the same thing is applicable when it comes to our fitness. We can do everything possible to be as fit as possible at 51 like Clint, or 60 or whatever the number is, but it's not going to be the same as 31, right? So I think we all need to embrace that we are going through different seasons of our life, and there's going to be fun parts about it and there's going to be less fun parts about it, but it's better than the alternative, right? We do need to be grateful that we are even alive and we can do the things that we want to do. And if we keep comparing ourselves to our younger selves, we are going to continually be disappointed in the present. And I don't think that is the best way to live. We can't help it. We're wired for comparison. Of course we are. But, it's time to look at how important that really is, because if it's bringing you down in the present, then it's not a habit that's serving you. So we need to look at things that do bring us joy. We need to be grateful for the things that we can do. We need to look forward to the future things that we'll be able to do. There's a lot of things that we might be able to do at 50 that we couldn't do at 30, but because we are wiser and hopefully wealthier, or maybe the kids have grown up, maybe we have more free time. There's a lot of things that you can do in your 50s that just wasn't on the table when you were 30. So maybe think about the things that bring you joy instead of the things that bring you frustration. What are you hoping to learn or gain in this training cycle? And Clint says, consistency. I know it's unlikely I'll be able to run as much as I could before arthritis, but I miss feeling like an athlete every day. Okay, so I think this gets to the whole point of everything. It's not necessarily getting Clint back to running a marathon, which again, if he wants to, he can get there. I think fall is too soon, but I'm not going to stop you if you want to run it, run it. But it's not about the marathon. It's not about the half marathon. It's not about the high rocks, right? It's about feeling capable. It's about feeling strong. It's about feeling good in your body. It's about doing something every day that makes you feel better. Does it feel good in the moment? No. Most runs, most gym sessions hurt and they don't feel good in the moment, but you feel better afterward because you did something to build yourself up. And that's what feeling like an athlete is. Consistency, doing something every day makes it important to your brain, right? You are what you repeat. You're not what you believe. So if you feel like an athlete, it's because you do something every day that's athletic, right? So feeling like an athlete, you can have that feeling no matter what your age. That is yours to get anytime you want. You want to feel like an athlete, go do athletic things every day. Take your rest days, of course, that's part of feeling like an athlete, but that is something that is available to you no matter what your age. And honestly, no matter what your fitness. I don't care if you're completely unfit and haven't run in years, you go out there and run around the block. That's what an athlete would do, right? So you can feel like an athlete. That's actually a choice under your control. And I want Clint to really feel like that is possible. As you're building fitness, it feels really, really hard. Your first run, he's probably struggling with those 2 miles, right? That's why he's here. He's trying to get a plan to help keep him consistent. He's doing those 2 miles on his own, but he's struggling, right? I'm sure that's what you're reading into this too. So he wants to feel that his fitness is at a point where he can knock off 2 miles and that's no big deal, right? We all want to feel like we're capable. And that's why we do hard things. It's not about 26.2 miles. It's not about the marathon itself. It's about feeling consistently able and capable. I can do hard things. That's what it's all about. And I am somebody who respects myself enough to work on myself every day. That's really what we all want, right? That's why we're here. It's not about the mileage. It's not about dragging sleds or whatever they do in high rocks. It's about doing something hard and making a commitment to myself. So, Clint, we're going to get you there. Again, I don't know if we're going to get to the marathon by fall. We'll talk about that. Maybe let's try a 5K this summer. I don't know. We'll see. So when I'm making this schedule for Clint, we are going to have a few weeks, that might be 2, that might be 4, of just consistency. So I'm not really going to increase the mileage. I'm going to do 2 miles every other day, maybe bump it up. After a couple weeks, I'm going to add some strides. So that's probably going to be 4 times 20 seconds of accelerations after an easy run, just to give him a little bit of feeling of speed. And then after 2 to 4 weeks, we're going to start to introduce a little bit of speed, get a little bit of the higher effort in just to, touch some of those higher paces, get the heart rate pounding. But I would like to do lots of cross training, lots of strength training, and lots is relative, of course, but just to get the habit, just to get him to be a well-rounded athlete first, before we specialize into something like more endurance running. Anything else you'd like to share that would be helpful to your success? Clint says, I just want to say thank you. You have been a huge part of my running journey over the years. Oh, that is so sweet. I talk about this a lot. Sometimes it feels like I'm just talking into the void here. I know y'all are out there because I see the numbers, but I still get touched when I get a little note of gratitude like that. It makes me feel like I'm doing all of this for a reason. And I read every single one of your notes. I read every single one of your reviews. And it's a free way to help me out, just to say thank you. It's so appreciative. I'm so appreciative of it. So all you have to do is go to Apple. Even if you're not an Apple user, it takes 5 minutes to create an account and write a review. You can write reviews on Spotify too. Those are also really helpful. But for some reason, Apple review has just a little more weight to it. So do both. That would be even better. Or send me a quick note to claire@theplantedrunner.com if anything I have done has impacted you in a positive way. That's it for today's episode of the PR Training Lab. As a reminder, you could get a training plan created by me for free, and I'll talk about it here on the Planted Runner podcast. All you have to do is write that Apple Podcast review and then go to theplantedrunner.com/PR lab. Thank you for listening to The Planted Runner, part of the Evergreen Podcast Network. Don't forget that you can enter to win a free custom training plan for your next race and get featured on the show. Just write an Apple Podcast review and enter at theplantedrunner.com/PR lab. Of course, reviews are the #1 way to boost this show's reach, and it's a great way to tell me what you'd like to hear next because I read every single one. Have a great run today.